Our next speaker is Professor Vasanthi Srinivasan. As many of you would know, she is a faculty member at IIM Bangalore. And of course, we have too many intersections, stuff which we do together. So I'm not going to give you any introduction on that front. But what is important here is that me and Vasanthi, we almost started creating our own MOOCs at the same time. So we know the kind of, the struggles that we went through. There were times when we would discuss with one another, and that's what I thought was very important for us to realize that, once again, Vasanthi will talk about, she's an extremely popular teacher as far as human resource management is concerned. In fact, we have no hesitation in saying that she is the face of human resource management in India. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Absolutely, right? So, but even for her to finally reach a finished product, that is immensely popular today, I have requested her to take us through some of those challenges that she went through. So over to you, Vasanthi.
Thanks, Saurav. I'm going to start with my highest moment. So last year, I don't remember if it was October or something, there was this mail from Jose, and he just sent it to the faculty body saying, congratulations, Vasanthi, because your course has been nominated by Business Insider as among the 20 free soft skills course for 2018. And so I just quickly went there to actually see what is it that they are saying. And two things kind of really struck me, that they were basically saying that this is possibly the only course on people management. Okay, and it's interesting why I'm beginning with that, because as I finish the session, you will actually kind of see why this is so important and significant. I spent all my life in HR. I know nothing else. I'm extremely passionate about it, and I think I just kill my students with passion, not because they are so excited about doing HRM. Okay, so and I want to lay out these caveats because 15 years, I love classroom. Classrooms energize me. Students who challenge me energize me the most. And therefore, when the Institute decided as a strategy to go for the massive open online and our tie-up with edX, our then director, Professor Sushil Vachani, identified a few faculty and said, do the MOOCs. And quite honestly, the general perception was that it should be easy because you speak anyway so much. So what's there? Just walk up and speak, right? And and I want to kind of pick on what Professor Sridhar from IIT Madras this morning raised. What is it challenge? It challenge. Oh, sorry, Mangal Sundar. Sorry, Professor.
He's also equally interested in what you are doing.
Yeah, okay, sorry, but Professor Sundar, I was referring to you. My session, actually, I went back and changed the title and called it Challenging Assumptions, because that's what this course has done. So quite briefly, I'm going to take you through. I teach in a place where very few students specialize in HR. So we have this wonderful title of the course called HRM, but who do I teach it for? For investment bankers and BCG consultants. So over the years, there are only 3 reasons why my students take my course. The first one, for those with experience, is because they want it on their CV. After all, they have to be people managers. The second ones who have no clue at all say, I've done operations management and brand management, and therefore I need to do something on human resource management. And the third set of people just say, my seniors told me to take your course, and therefore I'm taking it. Now imagine what a wonderful audience to teach to. And then you have the exec ed program where everyone's just saying, oh my God, this is the biggest challenge for us today. And so in a way, I lived in this world where what I was delivering created value to people outside, and the inside people saw the value only 5 years later. Okay? And this struggle for about 15 years really kind of got me saying, with the number of technocrats who are getting into businesses in India, there's almost this belief that technology will get me anywhere, which is rubbish. We know it. Okay? So the question was, how do you make something like people management, which everybody dismisses as an art? Yeah? You're born leader or you're not born. I mean, nonsense. Everything is acquired, and people management is a skill. We just don't teach that skill, and that's why you can do engineering drawing but can't do giving feedback. I mean, that's my philosophy. And I'm saying why? Because what drives you when you come into the course was just demystifying this whole nonsense on people management. Okay? So quite honestly, just a lot of anger, some work that I had done with managers across 15 years, and really that somehow there was this utopia through the MOOCs of being able to reach numbers that you would never reach in your lifetime. Okay, so very compelling to start. And let me now walk through, and I'm going to come from exactly the other side of saying, what does it mean to be a teacher with this kind, keep this context in mind, who's walking into the MOOCs. First one, what's in a name? So I had my doctoral student assisting me in the early stages on this, and then he had to go get busy with his doctoral thesis. So in comes my program associate, Vijaya, yeah? And I'll refer to her quite a few times because a large part of the credit on this course actually should go to her. So one of the first things was, she said, what is your course about? And this is day one. What is your course about? This is for people who aspire to be managers. Then why do you have a course like HRM? Why is it titled HRM? I said, wow, it's titled HRM because at the institute we teach HRM. But it doesn't make sense because that's not what you're teaching. And then she said, let's test out. And what did we do? We went out and tested, would you take the course if it was titled HRM, or would you take the course, what should be the alternate title? So we said management for first-time managers, all kinds of 4-5 course titles we went out and checked. And people said, HRM, we are not even going to touch that course, and you put it up and you'll have nobody. And so finally, through trial and error, we arrived at the course on people management. So the course title is People Management, and so my first experience, and what did we do? We used this idea of this name that people spoke about as People Management to do the branding for the course. We shot with 6 people from different professions who say, People Management, what's that? Okay, so we really use that to brand, to do the initial branding of the course, whatever that is. Okay, so my first takeaway is that challenge everything, including your course title. Second one, and here's my dear friend Vineet. I'm so glad you're attending this conference as an entrepreneur. Okay, this young boy walks up to my office, day one in his office, yeah, and he comes and he is telling me that we are saying that we have to. This course and all of that. Then he turns around and says, isn't there a dissonance between how you look and the way the course is being positioned? Because the way the banner for the course was the left-hand side banner. So he says, why do we have to be international? Okay? What a powerful statement. And it's that authenticity. And he's always seen me carry a book when I'm on the corridor. So that's how you have that representation. And what a beauty, because one of the participants actually wrote back saying, thank you for retaining the Indian identity of who you are. Yeah? So lesson number 2, not all international is necessarily good for you. There's enough local that actually appeals. Learning number 3, ouch. My friend, you can see that? He's the animator for this. Quite honestly, I think many of us faculty, we are stuck up people. Yeah? Oh my God, imagine using animation in my course, how embarrassing. I mean, faculty don't use animation videos. I really had a hang up about this. And so this boy, I gave him the storyline and I said, this is what it means to be a first-time manager. He put this video. And believe you me, the most transformational part of this, because this video comes roughly about 12 minutes into the course. And after that, you should see the discussion forum is flooded with Joe. Joe is the character. Oh, like Joe, my first day was heartfelt outpouring of how miserable their days were, exactly like Joe. And what a deep connect. What a deep connect. And then I realized that Joe evoked things in people that I would never have been able to do. And out of that, what happened? I put up this Joe, and for some stupid reason, and I tell you, as it unfolds, you realize you can't see the entire MOOCs. You think you can see it as you're preparing. And so we had this video, and quite honestly, I thought this video was about thinking. It didn't happen that way. People went to the discussion forum and started posting with angst, with deep feelings, and I had to counter those feelings some way, and I ended up using a podcast. Sorry, Vijaya. I think this is not what we wanted, right? Okay, sorry. Is that? So we used a podcast which said, you all got to look at the first day in Joe's life. Okay? Now this was inserted well. Volume.
You just watched Joe's first day as a manager, and I'm sure several of you could relate to it. In my work that I do on leadership development with senior and middle managers, I asked them to recall the three most critical incidents that they experienced, which fundamentally.
So why was this important? Because when there is outpouring on the discussion forum, which is helplessness, as a facilitator, how do you turn it around to make it positive? People are saying, I had a bad day, things went wrong, and then you're saying, treat this as a part of your career journey. Here's research which says that when people recount 25 years later their career experiences, being a first-time manager is one that keeps coming back because it's transformational to you. Yeah? So this was a video that was this podcast was added because we think emotions can only be evoked in face-to-face. Actually, my experience on the MOOCs has been that the kind of emotions that are evoked digitally, I think requires a lot of care from us as faculty, more so than what happens in the class, because people have an opportunity to redress. And I was just thinking about it. Imagine if I was a cancer survivor and I was watching your video and I just said, you know, what must be going on? And that's really the kind of emotions that it can evoke. And as a faculty, you know the point you said, woods and trees? You're so preoccupied with your shoot and your editing and your schedules that you really miss that it's actually going to touch someone at some point in time. The next one is about, so the discussion. I mean, quite honestly, if I look back on the entire course, the most powerful vehicle has been the discussion forum. You can clearly see the numbers, 462 posts, 572 posts. So people obviously are so much comfortable in anonymity to end up sharing. How many more minutes I have? 2 more minutes? Okay.
Joe's telling you right now.
Oh, okay. Fair. No issue, wherever he is. So, how do you build conversations there and steer community learning? I think one of the things that we actually did there was to make sure that people were building on the threads. And they were not starting new threads which were completely off. Yeah? So that allowed me to kind of regulate and therefore build on the previous discussions. Podcast questions. So I kind of looked at, so again, this is, sorry, how does, I'm really sorry, this, I'm not getting it right. Is there, so what did we do with the podcast question? Yes, I want to go back to the presentation. Yeah. So what did we do? You suddenly see that the discussion is going haywire. What you expected would happen is not happening. So what do you do? Okay, how do you rein control? Because you cannot come very visibly to be able to facilitate, and you know that the group is getting stuck with different people anchored in different places. And then what we did was we ended up posing a set of discussion questions to kind of steer the group. Yeah, this one.
Massable on the post mentions that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I am just picking up on that statement and looking at the posts, I find that there is a need for a little more input.
Yeah. So this kind of interventions, you'll have to keep stepping in. Additional resources, you've spoken enough about it. I think one of the biggest challenges, you have to end up creating your material or writing to people asking for them to give their material liberally, and this is continuing to be a challenge. Then, of course, we had self-assessments which were most popular. So we said, okay, how good a manager are you? Take this self-assessment, go back, get into the video and look at what it is. So this, I think, really helped people. And then we had a Mr. Curious who just said, please remember these points. That's all you need to do. Forget about everything else. This came in for a lot of appreciation. And I'm also kind of proud because it's purely Vijaya's innovation, where we said, how do we prepare the reader, the listener, to come mentally prepared and say, I know I have to dedicate this time. And we also put out how many minutes it's going to take for each part of the video. And then we converted this study plan into a video that Vijaya and I would speak to the community and say that, look, this module 5 is really tough. Why? Because it's going to get you to examine yourself, and I think many of us may not have done it. So please don't budget 1 hour. It's going to need you 1.5 hours. This material is dense, and you'll have to work more on it, and there are more readings. And that, a lot of people came back and said was very positive. Okay? Again, needless to say, I think we collected feedback on every component. And then, of course, for me, the testimonials are very interesting because, in a way, if I go back and look at the learning objectives, they're actually talking about the learning objectives as personalized outcomes and saying, I took away this. And when you kind of go back and link to the objectives of the course, there's just a validation saying that it kind of makes sense. Yeah. The last one that I want to leave are 3 things which I'm not going to explain on of them. But the first thing you realize as a faculty is that often as a traditional faculty, and you also alluded to it, we are lone rangers. We do what we want in the classroom. And suddenly you realize that there's a whole complement of people, each one of whose identity rests in what they do. Very simple. I had someone who was editing, and he looked at my sari, and there was a thread sticking out. He said, I want you to reshoot. And I said, oh my God, who's going to look at my sari? And the interesting thing is, he turned around and said, I don't want that to detract the viewer. Yes. My God. Okay, then you kind of respect the other person for what they bring to what they do. Everyone does their best. Like one of the cameramen told me that in the classroom, you're the boss. In the studio, I am the boss. So, yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah.
What you said is, I've heard this 100 times in the studio.
And finally, I want to say that for a strong classroom teacher, after you go back from doing a MOOCs, you're no longer the same teacher. Yes. Then you enter the classroom, you've just acquired a heightened sensibility of who you are and what you do. But at the end of the journey, your identity as a teacher will get questioned many times. 10 hours of content chunked. Okay, angst in terms of not being able to cover something, your identity as a teacher will suffer. Be sure as you're going through the MOOCs, because you will appear to be the most incompetent person because everybody else there has an opinion about how that should be done better and different. But when you walk out of it and you're kind of looking at the product, and therefore that mail that Joe sent was probably valuable because it was no longer about a lone ranger, it was actually about a difficult team effort. Thank you.